Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of Douglas Jardine's book, The Mad Mullah of Somaliland. This is a book that was published in early 1920s, and it's a book that is sort of a biography of Mohammed Abdullahi Hassan, or the Mad Mullah as the British called him. Now, Mohammed Abdullahi Hassan is the person who led the war against the British in Somaliland, and we can say the larger Somalia, for close to 20 years. And the British found him to be very destructive, and of course, that's why they fought him for that long. And Jardine was what was called the secretary to the administration of Somaliland between 1916 to 1921. He was second in command in British Somaliland. So we read this book as from someone who was very close to the colonial power in Somaliland. Now, in this video, I'm reading a part where it's still the first chapter. And this is like, in the first chapter is building, of course, the backdrop on which he's going to tell us the story of Mohammed Abdullahi Hassan. And part of that, of course, is telling us about the people. He tells us about the history of the people, the history of the land, the geography, and such kind of information. It gives us such kind of information. Now, there's this part where it tells us about I've talked about him discussing the origin of the Somali people, but there is also this part where it tells us about the other people that are related to the Somali people. And there is a group of people he mentions that I find to be very interesting. And this is because I think this is the third colonial document I'm reading that mentions this group of people as being related to the Somali people, even though today that's not how they are viewed. And in fact, in the so-called classification of African tribes, they are put in what is called the Nilotic group. Of course, you know these groupings of Nilotic and Bantu and Cushitic. And if you've watched my videos long enough, you know that I have a problem with that. And the problem I have with that classification is because it's a language classification that many people have taken to imply it goes into the genetics of the people, and it does not. Now, there is a part where, and the group I'm talking about is the Maasai people. Now, the Maasai is one of the most notable groups of people in East Africa, especially in Kenya and Tanzania. And the Maasai people used to occupy, we can say, the largest part of what we know today as Kenya. And in fact, you can go to very many places, and those places have names of Maasai origin, even though the Maasais are no longer there. But yeah, they occupied a very large section of this country. Now, this is what it says. Ethnologists has no difficulty in assigning the Somalis to the Eastern Hamitic branch of the Caucasic race, which also includes the Danakil, the Galas, that's the Oromos, and the Maasai. Of this race, the Somalis are worthy members. So he talks about this grouping, and this is an old book, and some of these old books have different ways of categorizing people. And that's something you notice when you read many of them, because sometimes if you went to school, say, beginning 1990s, you might think that these so-called groups of people that we learn in school are permanent. They have not always been permanent, and they are not even permanent even now. They keep changing, of course, with new studies and research and things like that. So during colonial times, there was this thing they used to call the Hamitic groups of people. And these are people, the Europeans, for some reason, maybe out of the way these people looked, consider them to be a little bit above the so-called Negroes, the other black people. And so Jardine is of the same school of thought, of course, going by what he writes in his book. And him considers that the Somali, the Danakil, and the Danakil, I think, are still people found in the Horn of Africa, maybe in Ethiopia, or maybe those parts, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, that region. I might be wrong, but I think that's where they are found. And also the Oromos. And so he says these three groups of people are basically related. And in the other video, of course, I discussed, or we read a part where he says that the Somalis are descendants of the Oromos and the Arabs and other groups of people. And I need to say this about these stories. Of course, we are not going to take it at face value that if Jardine says it, then it must be true. No, 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 no. We can't do that. These are things that they are not based on actual, factual, verifiable science. For the most part, is theories that we are trying to figure out who are these people, who are these people. That's what it is. But one thing that I believe strongly is that there is no group of people today who can claim to be pure anything. In fact, it's absurd. Once you start understanding history, then you realize it's very absurd for anyone to think that there is any group of people who are pure anything. There's no group of people, whether it's ethnic group or a race of people, who are pure anything. There is nothing like pure anything. We can only say that people are pure people because every group of people alive today or existing today are a mixture of other people that existed earlier, and those people are a mixture of other people. That's the thing I've come to learn about history or about people when I try to go into these old documents and old books and try to understand how humans have existed over thousands of years. So it's not just the Somalis. We can say, oh, they are descendants of Arabs and Oromos and other people. No, even the Oromos themselves, if you go far back, they are a mixture of other people. And those people are mixtures of other people. Kikuyus are a mixture of different people. Luos are a mixture of different people. And I've done videos to show how we have clans in these different groups, even some of these communities that we are told that they are in so different groupings, but they end up having similar clans. That tells you that people are so mixed up. There is nothing like, oh, these groups of people are pure and these groups of people are not pure. Those are my random thoughts.